The House versus NCAA settlement has happened, and it marks the official beginning of the pay-for-play era in college sports. It's the thing us ethical sports fans have always wanted. It brings revenue sharing, salary caps, general managers. It also brings new regulatory organizations, College Sports Commission and the NIL Clearinghouse. But it doesn't actually improve anything for anybody. The athletes, high revenue, low revenue, and even no revenue. They're going to have their income and mobility capped, or even worse, have their sports eliminated. For the fans and the universities, the special things that you loved about your sports are going to be distorted by more lawsuits and a chase for profitability. I would never say that we should go back to the old days of exploitation, but I understand. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
All right, welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. A very, very special show. I'm joined by two of my favorite people, world-class economist and host Bomani Jones, and genius and master of all things, Spencer Hall. Thank you guys so much. No better people to talk about that. But I know today's show is going to be great, not only because of the guests, but I got that thing painted on. Look at it, Bo. I got that hairline painted on.
You got some fiction?
I had to lie to him. Spencer, sometimes you got to lie to him, Spencer.
Hey, listen.
Got to hit him with a little play action.
You got to go, yeah, this is nice. I'm loving it.
Look at y'all biting on that dive.
Let me tell you something. That was such a good observation. I completely forgot about how you said there's a genius on this show, and it ain't me. That right there was a humbling moment. I have to say.
But money. The thing is, I expect you to be a genius.
Yeah.
It's like it's not. When I look at you, I see genius. Got to be honest. When I look at Spencer, I'm like, hey guys, let me remind you, that guy's a genius.
Oh no, that's because that's such a great sign that you grew up in Baltimore and not around where I did. Spencer is giving all kinds of genius. The difference is that the genius that he's giving, the surprise is not the genius. The surprise is the actual care for hygiene. That is what is belied by what is there.
I can smell you.
Yeah, no, this all smells great. This all smells fantastic.
All right, so to get back to the reason why we're all here, let's be honest, college football is the thing that we care most about. Mm-hmm. I think I have opinions on what this is going to do to college football, and I don't feel great about it making better, but I guess I'll start with you, Spencer. What do you think this hearing, this ruling, which, to be clear, there's 22% of the revenue is going to be given to these schools, and they're going to be forced to share it with not just football, all the sports. The clearinghouse is supposed to regulate whether the NIL deals are legitimate deals for NIL or they're just secret ways to circumvent this salary cap. So, Spencer, college football, what's going to happen, man?
What's supposed to happen is that we have something that functions a lot like a salary cap, okay? By the way, we're going to say salary cap, not revenue cap, because revenue cap, that's what the man wants you to call it, okay? Because if it was salary, we would say, oh, well, because these are employees. Because they are. So we're going to call it a salary cap. You'll hear revenue cap. You're talented. You're smart. Flip it. That's a salary cap. We're supposed to keep it at 20.5 million, somewhere around there for all sports. And those sports, it's going to go 75% football, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women's, and 5% to other. That's at least the breakdown what it's going to be for the University of Florida. What I was reading up beforehand, it's probably going to be similar across others. That's not the point. That's what's supposed to happen. Do we ever stick to what's supposed to happen? Absolutely not. There's a college sports commission because the NCAA is now going to be out of the business of regulating. Is somebody still going to try to regulate? Yes. Are they going to try to regulate NIL? Well, NIL collectives, as we know it, they're not going to function the same way. So this is what it's telling me. What did it cost Ohio State to field the team last year? About 20 million? 20, maybe 30 million, depending on who's counting what. Is this going to be regulated? Allegedly under an NIL clearinghouse. Fortunately, does that have the power of subpoena? Do we have the power of the cops on the side of this? No. The only people who are going to catch anyone who continues to want to do business the way it's always been done, which is under the table, in addition to above the table revenue sharing. Is there anybody who's going to be able to track this once these players have actually gotten the money and left? No, none. We have more ways to move money now. We have, we don't even have to move through American currency anymore. You could pay people we could pay them in that funny money, Bo.
Yes.
We could pay them in Bomani Jones certified funny. We could start our own coin. We could start Foxcoin.
I printed up some money in the back. Would you like some?
Would you like some, son? We printed you some on me and Satoshi just printed it up on a laptop for you. Okay. We can do all of this. Point being, what did it cost Ohio State last year? Well, if it cost them 20 mil, guess what it's going to cost this year? It's going to cost 40 mil because you got 20.5 mil to play with as a revenue cap. And on top of that, you have whatever boosters are going to pay. And people go, oh, well, surely somebody will step in and regulate this. How? I wish you luck.
Bo, you make the point when you brought up the boosters, you make the point before that since hanging out with you for the last, I don't know, 5-7 years, long time. Like I think a lot more like an economist now and think about incentives. And you made this point a while ago that stuck with me is that, yeah, this is a business to some people, but it's not a business to the boosters. So while we're talking about the revenue, what you gonna do with the revenue? They ain't trying to make money. They trying to flex.
Yo, they're trying to flex. Or more important, you got to understand something about tricking, man. That's just what some people like to do. Right? Like we have a tendency to view tricks with a certain measure of scorn, but that's some people's life calling. They love nothing more than to trick off on people. In this case, at least it's to people who actually work hard. Some people like to trick off on the lazy. That's a little bit disappointing and problematic and leads to poor results. But at least in this case, by and large, they want to trick off on people who are trying to make it happen. And I want to say this again. They want to trick. They can't help but to trick. They spent much of their lives breaking the law in the name of tricking. They don't want a dime of their taxes going anywhere near a black person. But if he got a hand in the dirt, trick, 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 trick. That's all we gonna do is trick. And so, yes, the key thing you point out there, because this is something that comes up when people start talking about private equity in sports, is no, private equity exists to make money. There are people here to get paychecks, but nobody's here to make a profit. That's not what this game is about. And so now that they've done this and they put these things in place, I think what has been lost in people's minds or important understanding is there were two levels to what was wrong with the previous state of affairs. One of them, obviously, is that the guys weren't getting paid. Or the guys and gals, sorry about that, if we're being specific, that they weren't getting paid. But if you broaden out, the larger technical issue was there was a cap on earnings in place. Now, what the economists will tell you is basically you can't fight money. You put the cap in place, people are going to find one way or another to bring this all back up to the equilibrium wage. All of that is to say the tricking is not going to cease. Once you put the cap on, now it's like, well, damn, how do we find a way to get over on the cap? Because this isn't the pros. You win in this game by outright having the best players. Not the best players plus this other stuff that is around them. No, everything is set up to get you the best players. And the way you really have to do it now, because you didn't have to do it with money before. Now you really have to do it with money because we pay now.
I alluded to this in the beginning in my open a little bit about how things were different in the old days, and maybe I'm just old enough to always be nostalgic. And while if we can take out the parts about it that we don't like, I do feel like the direction that we're going, the way that the sport has changed, to your point about private equity, like nothing has ever gotten better. And you two are super music fans. Name the music, the art form that started out as they all did. They start out as beautiful little expressions of a specific culture. Oh, we can get money for it. It builds it till it gets to a point where it can be commodified, and then Kendrick got to come clean it up.
Well,
which is not the solution. Or I guess seeing how that applies to this sport, I guess I'm wondering, and my original question about how things change was partially about, do you think that it's going to level the playing? Like, is there going to be a benefit from this? Because it doesn't feel like it is to me.
I think that, is this going to make things better? No. And I have said this from the very beginning, that it was not actually going to make things better, right? It would make them more fair, but it is not going to make them necessarily better for us as viewers. And I think the most toxic thing that they did, that they had to do, is to make it where you didn't have to sit a year when you transferred. Like, I think that the unfettered mobility of players is a problem for this as as something you watch. It's something that you follow. They all play. It's very, very difficult to pull this off, and it interferes in some ways with the charm of the sport. And I think that what gets lost here is this game traffics on charm, okay? Like, the gap between quality of play in college football and pro football is not quite the gap between NBA and college basketball, but we're not here just because the players are great. We're here because this is a really charming sport in some really weird ways often, but it's very charming. The charm is the part that is being whittled away, and part of the charm, right? And I throw this to Spencer because he and I are similar in this way. Part of the charm is the outlaw component of this. Part of the charm is paying people in paper bags. Part of the charm is the wild things that you hear and the crazy people that are involved. Once this gets to be straight ahead about money, it's not going to be the same.
Now, we've still got a new outlaw element, though. This is the funniest part about all of this. The funniest part is that we've managed to wind that back in. Because even when college football goes legitimate, there's still an element of the outlaw and crooked to it. Because right now, every NIL deal that's over $600 is going to be scrutinized, okay, and kept account of by some combination of the NIL clearinghouse, which sounds like the worst accounting agency in the world, and Deloitte, an actual accounting agency, okay? They're supposedly going to stay on top of these things. This is the part I love. How on earth are you going to do that with a bunch of 18 and 22-year-olds who leave Lamborghinis in their driveway? I'm not making that up. Carson Beck had his Lambo stolen out of his house in Miami. So what makes you think when a booster Venmos you, a couple of grand a week to like play right tackle for, an ACC school? I was trying to think of like who might get the 1,000 benefit instead of the 10,000 benefit. ACC, maybe, not Boston College. I'm Duke. Somebody's going to throw you that for Duke.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
How are you going to keep track of that? If you pay cash, how are you going to keep track of that? If I pay you in funny money, how are you going to keep track of that? You think that we've gone legit. No. Yeah. We've merely doubled the price for the same old grift.
Yeah.
That's what we've done.
The only reason why we went momentarily legit was because it was easier.
Yeah.
Like, this ain't nothing but water. It's going to find the easiest path, right?
It will.
Like, now, if you make me have to go to a clearinghouse, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to jam this money in the bag. I'm going to drop it off where it needs to be dropped off.
But this is, I think, something important about the idea. Like, the clearinghouse is one thing, but the NCAA used to have a fairly robust investigative and enforcement arm. The enforcement arm is the part that we're really talking about here. I didn't say they were really good. I said that they were really aggressive. And what they were really good at was bullying kids, right? Like running up on you at your house, running up on your hometown or whatever it is, and they can strong arm you. But over the years, the NCAA's force got whittled down. It became a job that nobody really wanted to do. I don't think that this NCAA, unless they're going to be really willing to pay a lot of money in order to get people, I don't know who they're really going to get that can do this job in the ways that they used to do it. Because, look, they were not that good at enforcing in the first place. What you were really dependent on was somebody snitching at some level because they were betrayed somewhere in the process, right? And then you do like maybe an SMU thing where you catch them doing it twice and then you can shut the whole place down. And those threats were there. But that ain't even a threat that really exists anymore because all of this is too big to fail, right? It's just going to be a lot of money flying around here. And I just want to make this point very quickly. No one is made more likable by having a bunch of money. Perhaps more attractive, not more likable, especially not young people. Young, rich people, nobody likes them. Nobody does.
Bo, you made a point earlier that a bunch of things that this is not doing, but it caught my ear when you said it is making things fairer. I'm not sure I know how it's making things fairer. Like, if we were looking at it from the athlete's perspective of the low revenue sports or the non-revenue sports or the athletes from football fundamentally, like, I don't know at what point it gets this new situation make things fairer.
I think it's fairer in the sense that you don't have to risk your playing career to get money, right?
There you go.
Like I don't think we can lose sight of the fact that there are rules and regulations in place, and there are people with a certain type of rigid morality that maybe we're staying away from money. Like, there's a story about one very famous football player who decided not to go to Oklahoma because he was offended by the idea that somebody would offer money, right? Like there are still those people who live like that. So I think it is fairer in that regard. These non-revenue kids,
yeah,
I've got some hot take indifference to what happens to most of them.
Are you saying you're not concerned with the Olympic sports as revenue models, Bo?
Are you saying that are you asking if I am that concerned with the kids who disproportionately have parents that could take care of this anyway? Whose whole sports are already being paid for by the sports that the less affluent, well, what used to be the less affluent kids play. Are you asking that? Because if the answer is, yeah, I don't care. Right? Like, y'all can play a club sport. You don't need this whole infrastructure. And there's somebody willing to trick on your little sport.
You made the point earlier, Spencer, that you divvied up the money in the way that you expect it to be for most schools.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever considered the idea that some schools are just going to be like, you know what? We're not a football school. Like, I'll put my money into being a basketball school or being a gymnastics school because, frankly, if you're a part of a conference, then the money's coming no matter what. It's the same fundamentally why the Browns can be bad forever and still have their revenue go up. It's like you're a part of a money-making organization that's, frankly, not dependent on how well you run your organization. Like, it might actually be wise for some school to try to become a basketball power or women's basketball power rather than chase after, because right now we're in a situation where UConn is being like pushed around by their football team. UConn, you're a basketball school, but the football team's making a decision because the money's that big.
Yeah, dude, I love that. Like, as a football partisan, I'm like, yeah, stick it to basketball. Get Jim Calhoun. Yeah. I know he's not the coach anymore. I just always hear, not a dime. Like, yeah.
That was hilarious. Not one dime.
Not one dime. Yeah, no. I know he's not the coach anymore, but stick it to UConn basketball anyway. I have no real animus against that. I just wanted to say it.
Do you think that there will be different allocations for how the money is going to be spent?
Fascinating question already asked and answered by Matt Brown in the Extra Points newsletter, which is one of the things I read to make sure that I wasn't completely talking out of turn on this. Matt Brown brought up the point that in these allocations, you're going to give these long-term reports that are going to indicate how you have allocated this. Those don't necessarily have to be the same year to year, meaning that somebody, a savvy athletic director, say at Texas Tech, a place that will spend $1 million on a softball player, maybe we tweak these knobs back and forth a little bit just to give everybody a perk, right? Like, hey, we're one player away in women's basketball. Boop, pop it over for a year, right? We get them, program goes big, start recruiting big. Okay, cool. Let's go over here to, say, women's basketball. Maybe we need this point guard. Boop. We just move things over a little bit. They don't have to be the same year to year. That goes within football as well. Like, if you wanted to over-index on football one year, and you might go, and the projections were saying, well, no, you got a little extra room here. Slide it over. See if you can get that recruit. See if you can get that revenue, get that class. Pop, do the professional sports thing, which I have watched as a college fan for years in envy, aka the Glazer family, which is, we're competitive this year, and for the next 5, we ain't, right?
Hello, Florida Marlins.
Hello, Florida Marlins, right? We need a new facility, win a title, suck for a decade. Yeah.
Well, I think where that's going to be interesting to me is North Carolina, a school that I have some attachment to, jumps out, right? Because I don't care how much money the football program is bringing in, right? That's just a quirk of things. Like, what requirements or what money is the basketball program looking at, especially now that they're falling behind a little bit, right? Like, it's time to pump up the jams. But then on the other side, you got Bill Belichick over there saying there will be no jams being up pumped, right? Like, that's not going to happen.
I think Bill might be comfortable with some jams now.
Fair.
New Bill.
Fair. He is expanding his horizons. Like he knows all the lils. He is
Bill Belichick might know who Sabrina Carpenter is.
It's on the board. It's on the board. But yes, that's going to be I do think that some schools are going to make those decisions, but the problem is when you make those decisions, you've got to answer to the football team, right? Yeah. No matter what happens in most of those places, you're going to have to answer to the football team. Like at Kansas, that's a great one. The football team, nobody cares, but they're going to be making more money than the basketball team that everybody cares about. What I also think is going to be fun in this, and Spencer, you mentioned it with Texas Tech, I don't think people really understand why the Southwest Conference became what it was in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. And it is because I don't think any state has more little schools with big money behind them quite like the state of Texas. All of those little schools have some people with a lot of money in a way that is not present all the way down as we're starting to see to like UT San Antonio. And the former Southwest Texas State, Tillman Fertitta, who owns the Rockets. That dude's a billionaire who loves to trick on the University of Houston.
I would sorry to cut you off. I would also add that care about football. Because
but
there are a lot of
they care about
schools.
Everything. Like Spencer just said, they'll put $1 million on a softball player at Texas Tech.
We're not making that up. That just happened. Yeah. From Stanford.
She's black.
From Stanford.
I mean, just put a hand in the dirt.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but she's a black woman throwing a softball and they're tricking off $1 million to get her to Lubbock.
Mm-hmm. I mean, prices reflect location.
Gonna get her to Lubbock.
That's fair.
I mean, I feel like you answered your own question.
I ain't gonna lie, man. You leave Stanford to go to Lubbock. I know it was $1 million, but I want to see your transcript. That sounds like academic probation behavior. You go get down to Texas Tech and be like, why do I even go to class?
Or she immediately graduated. They're like, you want to transfer? Here's your degree.
Right, she can transfer. Oh, she transfers 2.5 years worth of credits in, and Texas Tech will give her a master's.
I want to get to soon spin it forward. What do we see for the future and talk about unionization and collective bargaining and stuff. But before we get to that, I think you guys have answered this question, but do you think that it changes the parity at all in college sports? Like, nah.
This is not supposed to be parity, man.
Yeah. Not on balance, but I think what you could see is I
come from a world in pro sports where that is the that they use to sell the value of the salary cap. It's like, but it's parity. So yeah, I did. It's never worked before. I don't expect it to work now when we obviously understand that they are going to be circumventing the cap in other ways. But I'm sorry, Spencer, you had something to add on.
I think you're going to see some spikes. I think you can see more B+ teams that might be able to spike up to an A every now and then with some canny manipulation of the salary cap and with the budget. I think you can see some people like Texas Tech. Texas Tech's a great example. Bo, B rank program. If I was going to go that's a B rank program. Solid B, respectable B, right? For a lot of reasons.
Solid 7 wins a year.
Overperformed, I think, in terms of their geographical location and their demography, right? So compliments to them by calling them a B program. Because if I was running a program in Lubbock, that's a D, brother. We are getting straight D's. So the people in charge of that program have been smart for a long time. And I think you could see a program like them bump up to a B+, maybe even an A every now and then because of additional money that they're throwing in the window through NIL, through savvy manipulation of the cap, and yes, maybe some skullduggery. So I think that's what you'll see. I don't think it's going to change the overall dynamics of the sport. Ohio State is going to Ohio State, right? And a lot of the intangibles that they brought to the table before this system are going to be as powerful or more influential now under the current system. So I think that's what you're going to see. Additionally, I think you're going to see we got some free riders, baby. Free riders, another economic term. You're going to see some people in these mega conferences who are going to have fat revenue and no results, and they're going to be fine with that.
Yes, no results and also limited expenditure.
Mm-hmm. Keep it cheap.
Do you see the super conference coming? So I think we all acknowledge that this ain't the end. There are going to be more lawsuits. There are going to be more tweaks and alterations. But I think the idea that I hear a lot that I think makes sense, but honestly doesn't solve some of the bigger problems, which we'll get to as far as like fairly compensating the players and having a consistent structure. But it does solve some of the other problems. Is like, let's make a super conference, and then the rest of y'all is college minor leagues.
It'll destroy the game. Like the de-regionalization of this is the beginning of the end for all of this, because it tears down the whole reason that anybody gets in this in the first place. Like, to me, the biggest mistake that has been made is all this emphasis on the playoff, which happens quite honestly because the number one, I mean, they know what they're doing here. The network that kind of runs the game broadcasts the playoff, and so that's the Super Bowl that they are promoting. But there's only one school in this country that plays for a national championship every year. That's Alabama. Everybody else is happy if they get it, right? If it gets to that point, that's fantastic. Ohio State, yeah, they're glad they won that national championship. They're still more mad that they haven't beaten Michigan since the 20 teens, or however long it's been since they got one of those W's. You know what I mean? Like, so I think the part that I'm curious about, and I'm doing that thing where you forgot the question you were answering, so you just turned it to something else.
Go ahead. I'm sure it'll be interesting and insightful.
I'm curious how, like, what role history is going to play now. So, for example, Domonique is the alumnus of a program that should be much better, but they're still paying for their past racism, right? There's no other explanation for why it is that Maryland can't, which has a lot of really good football players and a forgotten and an overlooked Black population in terms of how big it is, but none of the best players stay in Maryland. They're even willing to go to Penn State, which, not your boy. But the Big Ten, when they got Maryland and they got New Jersey, they got these states with great players who don't stay at the home school, right? So does the money perhaps provide a way where people don't think about this stuff anymore? Because the quiet as it's kept in college football, the SEC overwhelmingly has kind of overcome it, but there are all kinds of schools, like Texas is another great example, which are these historical underachievers because they're paying the price for their previous racism that continues for 50 years down the line. Now that the money game has changed in the way that it has, are we far enough removed from that you can just trick off enough money, say you're going to spend enough, and that then levels up? Like, the competition or the parity level changes because some of these schools now can come closer to what their self-actualization, what that level should actually be. That is one thing hypothetically that would happen, except Ohio State is going to come back in with their historical legacy of paying you no matter what color you are, blue, purple, green, yellow, whatever, all the jelly beans, you know?
I think that's where if people were going to stick to the salary cap, then we would see something similar than what we saw with the max salary in the NBA, is that other things became important to the players, like location,
big one,
and putting together. But if we are to accept that teams aren't going to still stick to the salary cap, then players are going to go where the most money is. If the money's the same, I'd rather be in DC than in wherever. And I don't know.
Yeah, that's
what you're gonna.
What you're two arguments on that, Domonique. Right? Like, on one level, it's better to be in DC, but in DC, you hollering at girls, and so are the Wizards.
Yeah, fair point. All right, well, you gotta pick a big city where you ain't got the same level of competition. But I promise you this: the local college bar is one thing. Having a table at a real place is a whole nother thing. So maybe the Wiz, maybe they get their first choice, but you gonna be in pole position generally.
Columbus, Ohio.
No, thank you.
Columbus, Ohio.
I can't. What is more fun than being a Buckeye? I can't imagine, boy.
Well,
hold on, Spencer. Let me ask you this: are the Ohio State players going to have to pay for their own cars now?
I believe that these would fall under the untraceable benefits that now become even more important in a system where we want more untraceable benefits, where when we have the defined value of the labor and we have additional capital that could go towards acquiring that attractive labor, will it not find its way down the mountain, Bo? Will it not flow in the form of rental car fleets, in the form of dealership? How many dealership tags do you think you're going to see back in the lot? It's going to look like 2014 in Alabama again in some places.
Do you remember when Maurice Claret called ESPN the magazine and laid out how the whole game was played, and everybody just decided he's lying?
What if we could do that all again? Have it be mostly above board, except for the amounts attached. have it all be deniable, and all of the talent could, in a moment, transfer. How are you going to do that? Do you know that some legend, right? We're talking about the game and about how you can't keep people together anymore, which is a byproduct of not being able to call them employees. We could have contracts.
We haven't even gotten to that one.
Haven't even gotten to that, or state laws, or how Title IX is going to play with all this. That's very important to anyone listening to this. You should know the lawyers are still engaged. They are in combat as we speak.
So many legal fees. So many legal fees for the next decade.
This ain't going anywhere. But what you need to know is this: that if we had all of this, and we have all of these various deals that are going to keep labor in place, okay, we don't have that. So because we don't have that, all of these enforcement mechanisms are going to be institutionally dependent, and there's going to be no way. There's a built-in, hey, we cooperated. Remember, you can get in trouble for not cooperating if this is ever investigated, right? The schools can go, hey, we cooperated, but our player didn't. And now he's on his third school. Some legend, this is my long way of getting to this, some legend is going to be at like 4 schools and get 4 different NIL deals, and is going to do it 4 different times to become the wealthiest college athlete ever.
I will salute him like you and also call him a legend, but I will also acknowledge that I'm hated. And I this is the oldest man thing about me currently at this moment. I'm sure there will be more, but I love free agency. Mm-hmm. I hate the transfer portal. I hate to say it, but I hate the transfer portal.
I'm just because free agency isn't quitting.
I'm gonna de-age you here. You just need to make it like European soccer, where you're just like, yeah, man, we got this crazy player, and he's from Iceland, and then he was at Lazio, and then he was at Paris Saint-Germain, and now he's at Liverpool. That's what it's gonna look like.
Yeah, but here's the thing, man. I think we all agree this transferring all in one thing or whatever, man. Transfer portal got a lot of quitters in it. Like, not everybody's a quitter, right? Like, so for example, I don't consider Jameson Williams when he was a first-round receiver, but the number 4 receiver at Ohio State.
That's smart.
I don't think that's quitting, right? Like,
no.
Like we've got a crowded room here.
Let me stop you right there, Bomani, because I know you know this about athletes, but sometimes you allow common sense to sneak in and forget that everybody thinks that they're Jameson Williams. Like, all the other guys who you're calling quitters are deciding to leave because they I'm behind all these bums who are in front of me.
Well, some of them do that, and some of them are like, yo, I'm never going to get to play here. Which, by the way, I think is the wrong. Like, Quinn Ewers is a great example. One of the worst decisions anybody to me has ever made. And it worked out okay with him at Texas. But the idea that C.J. Stroud beat me out after I left high school a year early so I could get it checked, and then I leave, you would have had a year of throwing the ball to Spencer. What's that guy's name?
Nah.
Jackson Smith-Njigba?
Yeah. He would have had a year throwing to that boy whose daddy was in the NBA, and all you need is 1 year of film. Like, I don't know who tricked these boys into thinking you need anything more than 1 year of film. He'd have been, you're a quarterback. Stay at Ohio State until they make you leave.
Or don't and become Joe Burrow. That's also...
Well, now, okay, to be fair, I think Joe Burrow was in a different situation in that he got passed by somebody younger than him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was the game flipper on that.
Also a system where they were like, we'd like you to be a willing runner. And he was like, yeah, I'm willing to transfer to LSU. That's what
Jeremiah
I'd like to do.
Smith is the one that you're talking about. You're mixing up those two cold freshman receivers.
Exactly. Which one of 9? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go.
And that's
hold on. Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams. Like, I'm not leaving where they are if I'm there until they say they're leaving.
Yeah.
That's one of another thing that, like, the rule that the NFL has, the 3 years removed from high school. It's another thing that feels like an unfair rule that they should remove, but I also kind of love it, and because it leads us to get to know and experience these players, and it speaks to the value that the college sports environment produces for the NFL is you have ready-made stars there. So one thing you said earlier, and there's a few things I want to get to before we run out of time, but one of them is about the NFL. Should they come in? Because, Bomani, you said that the Super League or a Super Conference would kind of destroy the game and ruin, like, the NFL benefits from this. Like, at any point, should the NFL consider trying to figure out how to get involved and fix what we all see as a process that is...
Yeah, except the NFL is like, look, man, as long as we get them boys here at some point, we'll turn them into stars. Like, they're not in the situation where the NBA, which is being terribly hurt by the fact that there's no introduction of these players truly before they get there. The NFL is like, nah, we'll make anybody that dude, baby. Like we gonna put them in a Steeler suit, and everything is gonna be just fine.
I think there's another fascinating like flip on that, which is that you might see, if you haven't seen it already, big college programs stratifying to the point where they use Sunbelt, FCS teams, Conference USA teams, where they use them as farm leagues, informal farm leagues, just like the NFL does with college football.
You mean like Kansas State uses the junior colleges of their local area?
Just like the genius Bill Snyder saying, you having trouble getting in, son? Huh. Why don't you go cook over there for a year or two? Get real big. Why don't you eat? Why don't you eat a lot?
Hold on,
then we'll see you in a year.
Get real old. That's the real Bill Snyder trick, to be like, yo, 24-year-olds are really good at playing college football.
Yeah. You have a union card as a welder? Linebacker. Bring it. Yeah. Man. That's what you're gonna see more of, right? And I think that,
speaking of union card, well done, Spencer. I think one of the last places that we need to talk about is the future of, and college sports union exists, but like a different union, a union that has the negotiating ability to agree to a CBA with college sports in general. And again, to be clear, while we're focusing on college football, is because what we care about. Like, this is about everyone. And I, as like a very public union supporter and lover and advocate, the more I read about this, the less I think collective bargaining is a reasonable answer. I have such a hard time figuring out, because when I complain about all of what's going on, I wish that when this first became a profitable endeavor, like, I don't know, 30 years ago, they should have instituted some rules then, because then this would have grown into something. But now it feels a little too late, and I have no idea what, like, I tried to think of a way that we could institute some sort of structure that would solve all this, and I don't.
Hey, man, you ever heard of a union where the oldest people were 24?
Yeah, the Soviet, the one that started the Soviet Union. That's about it.
I'm sorry. Like, I thanks for being a guest, but this is something that I got to go off on for a little bit. The strength of unions is, frankly, about the solidarity and willing to sacrifice. Fundamentally, like, you can go a bunch of different ways, but fundamentally, it's about us being together and willing to endure some pain. Nothing in life is free. We're going to have to pay for it either with money or with sacrifice. How can you have solidarity when you are just a stepping stone? How can you have solidarity not only between the quarterback and the third string D lineman? We're talking about the quarterback and the anchor on the 4x100 track team. Like, how do you have that solidarity while also, the hardest thing when I was in like pro sports unions, one of the most difficult things is that we only got a small group of guys that are around long enough to give a to actually feel like the union is theirs, who are also willing to sacrifice. And most of those guys have been through similar experiences, so there are some connections that can be made. We look at this college sports landscape, it's like they have no connective tissue. They're not going to be around for long. Many of them, the most powerful ones, are like, man, I'm just hanging out here for a minute. I don't know. So, like, if you are expecting that union to have the power to collectively bargain, and the starting point is that you get 22% of revenue split up against all other sports, whereas the pro leagues, it's half for most, split up against or split up with the athletes that are in the sport. Like, I'm sorry, there's no question. Just had the soapbox for a minute.
Yeah, no, I mean, so there have been attempts at various forms of organization, like Ramogi Huma and his organization, the National Collegiate Players Association, he's had the backing of, I think, the steel workers to help them with that. So you try to get a union, you try to get a bigger union that is there behind to support with money and all this other stuff. But in the end, you were still dealing with teenagers. And I did a lot of talking with the guys around the United movements in 2020. And look, those are incredibly impressive young men. You know what I mean? Like it was, and what they put together and what they managed to pull off was really interesting to watch and seeing their process and everything else. Guys like Andrew Cooper that were working on that. It was fantastic to watch. And you ain't really heard nothing about that recently, have you? Mm-mm. Like this is there's a real herding cats sort of element that we're talking about here. And what you need are super duper trustworthy grown-ups, and you're not getting that. Then on top of it, we've talked about, we tiptoed around the idea of these guys being made employees, which is the thing that the schools are trying to push back against stronger than ever. And the bottom line is, I don't think we have a legal system in this country anymore that you could trust. I mean, I don't know when you could fully, but if this big institutions say we don't want these boys to be employees and these ladies to be employees, they're never going to be. It's just never, it's not going to happen. Then at that point, how exactly, what do you organize around?
Yep. And this all goes back to this. What do we have now? Boys, there's a stagecoach a-coming. Better head it off at the pass. Get what you can and run away. That's what you're going to get. That's the shape of things to come. By the way, I'm going to beat Fox to this. What he's basically saying is you can't have a labor movement where there's wide receivers, where there's a wide receiver mentality. Yeah. But what about me? I need the ball. I can't block all the time.
When I first went to the basketball union, the report that I gave back to some of my friends at the football union was, it's a lot like the football union. It's just if the football union was all quarterbacks. Like it's the same. Whereas but it's just like, everybody is their own industry. And the people who are going to get taken advantage of are always going to be the people who aren't in the room and the people who don't have the power to make you pay for it. So if we have these big, strong institutions that have people who are going to be there for extended periods of time, who have lobbyists, who have power, who have influence, even if you selected some group to lead them, they will have the ability to influence them more than the players, which is why you always fundamentally get back to a union. But what is this union going to do? Because you want the people to represent themselves. You want them to have the power to do it themselves. But if they are not willing to walk away, which it'd be stupid to, then what you gonna do?
I'll tell you who you can make a union out of. Walk-ons. That's who you could do it. If you want the only
walk-offs, because that's exactly what the coach going to tell them.
Yeah, they're going to tell them walk off.
Out of here.
They're going to tell them walk off. But I will tell you, if you can't get to a practice squad, if you can't assemble a practice squad, and all I've got are a bunch of frat boy wannabes in pads on Thursday after my decent guys walked out, that's where you hit them. It's not. It's not the nobles. It's not the aristocrats. It's the staff.
I believe even without that, I think those guys are going away. Because if you have to functionally have some sort of minimum salary, which I think at some point you're going to have a minimum salary, right? Mm-hmm. They are going to have to, they're not going to have 120-man rosters. They're going to be like the NFL. You know who the scout team's going to be? It's going to be the backups. And all you guys got to go. And particularly if we're talking about how Title IX plays into this. I think is a huge, I don't know if any of us are qualified to make the predictions, but I know that it's going to be something. It's going to shape this in some way.
It's hilarious now that we actually have to think about Title IX, right? That has always been the concern, trolling for the people who really didn't care. Well, exactly. We got to keep up with Title IX because those were the people that really cared about the ladies. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's what you're here about. I guess, okay, I don't want to talk about that right now. But anyway, Title IX will have to be adhered to.
Yeah, this is great that we're going to have people who have to pretend like that are going to have to balance their lack of concern for women in sports with their racism. The people who govern this thing. We're going to have to, those two things are going to be fighting. It's going to be an amazing tussle to watch.
I don't think any of us know what the future of any of this is going to be. I would say a good way to punctuate this would be it's going to be fun to watch and find out, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be fun. It's going to be long and arduous and surprising and concerning, and I have a hard time thinking that and I guess maybe this is just part of like getting older, is I have a hard time thinking that I'm gonna like it more. And maybe some young kids are growing up like, this is college sports. I love how chaotic it is. Like, I don't have a feeling that 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, this is so much better. I love college football.
No, like I went to a wedding over the weekend and I met up with somebody who played at North Carolina, right? And was talking to him about his career, which had some ups and downs in the time period or whatever. And it was my reminder of part of, like, especially when you're like up close with teams, part of the charm was like watching an 18-year-old turn into a 22-year-old, right? Like watching that development and the changes and the maturity and everything else, especially as somebody who works in the media, you really get to, you get that view of people all the time. And that's kind of going away, right? And it's not just the guys who turn out to be good. It's just kind of the guys who turn out to be there. And I still contend most of these guys need to stick around because the long money is by becoming an institution in a little town or whatever and like developing those relationships. But no. This is not, it may be in many ways fairer, but it will not be more entertaining. And if they had done something about this sooner, then we would not have had to see people make these, like the choice between the two.
Now, I'm the lone dissenter here. Bring on the anarchy, bring on the stagecoach, yes. bring on the scammery. Am I looking forward, by the way, to Boise State getting the copper wire stripped out of its walls once private equity moves in and finds out they can't make a profit, but they got to get it somewhere? No, I am absolutely not. But you know what I am looking forward to? I'm looking forward to some barnstorming team committing outright fraud in order to give Fresno State their first national title, just like I do in the video game, right? And then immediately imploding for like a decade after that. That's how I've decided to have fun. I can't change this universe of the terms that I have to engage with it on, but what I can do, I can look for the fun. That's going to be the fun part.
I gotta change my outlook. I gotta become more like you, Spencer.
Look, hey, listen, the house is gonna burn. You might as well bring marshmallows.
All I know is this: no matter what happens, Texas A&M 7.5 wins.
7,
maybe 8.
I got one other note for you, Bomani, that you would appreciate. The new college football came out yesterday.
Oh, it did.
My son is on there getting his game right. He don't know. I can't wait. He hasn't asked me to play yet. It just came out yesterday.
Are you going to do it? He hasn't asked me to play him yet. Are you going to do it to him again? Are you going to hit him with the triple again?
You're going to introduce him to fundamental real football? You're going to make him read some keys?
I am not going to throw that ball at all. Right, so I'm going to get a Navy on his.
What people have to remember is that Domonique was a triple quarterback in high school. So, like, he knows what all the reads are. I think, like, you're just flexing on him doing it with Navy, but there's nothing stopping you from taking a top-notch program and still running the triple on him.
And grabbing the Navy playbook.
Yes, there's nothing stopping you from doing this.
That's just in case those who don't know. Last year, I was messing around with my son and just playing, having fun, and he beat me and was talking trash. I was like, oh, okay, that's what we doing. So I got the Navy midshipman, and I triple option that to sleep and was yelling, read your keys after every snap. Read your keys.
He doesn't know what a key is. So you were telling him, like, I remember how mad I used to get playing basketball with my dad in the driveway, and my dad was older by the time it came around. I have never really given great consideration to the angle that there is the dad in video game part, which levels the playing field, but makes it no less infuriating when your dad is beating you. Because he's going to talk more noise because he can beat you every now and then.
He can't beat me every now and then. I was messing around, but it does not level the playing field because the thing that you know, Bomani, that I also know is they kids. They kids. They kids do kids things. And playing football? Like, nah, he gonna do some kids eventually. You know what I'm not gonna do? Turn that thing over. I'm gonna wait for you to make a mistake.
I know that Spencer is more of a Simpsonian than you are, Domonique.
Yeah.
But this is all shaping up to Domonique being the one to pull off one day. I would like to announce my retirement undefeated from video boxing.
I did see that episode. I will not retire.
You're gonna get what you know is your last dub and never come back.
I would be fine because you know what I would feel like? I would feel like I taught him something. That's my job.
Yeah.
If this man stopped the triple option, I would be thrilled if he recognized. I ain't even gonna say it on here. If he recognized the defenses that he should be using and the decisions that he should make, I would be ecstatic. But what I'm not gonna do is let him think that he just beat me. Read your keys, kid. Let that be a message to all you kids.
And then when he finds that defense, somebody's gonna start throwing it over the top.
That's it. Well done, Momani. Sounds like you should be a football coach. Thank you guys both very much for joining me. This was outstanding. I can't wait to do it again sometimes. Can't wait to be on Momani's show very soon. On
Friday.
Can't wait. Spencer, you don't really have me do anything with you except send.
I wouldn't subject you to the shutdown fullcast. Yeah. Well, I'll keep sending you TikTok.
They're the best. They're funny. Appreciate you guys. Yes, thanks to all the great producers. Thank you, Charlie. We out. I love you, Pudville.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.